I'm Insomniac, and this is the Invicta Marvel, the Punisher. Okay, before we dive headfirst into a frozen lake with this one, I'm going to do something I don't normally do, and we're going to go over some specs, even though I already have them in the video description for you. I just want you to drink this in ahead of time. 54 millimeters in diameter, has a lug-to-lug length of 61 millimeters. It's 15 millimeters thick, has a strap width of 26 millimeters, and on my gram scale it weighed 8.4 ounces. This thing is massive. And one more thing before we take a closer look, I did not just randomly pick this watch for review. I decided to see what the highest rated watch was right now on Amazon in 2022, so I typed in men's watch and sorted the 70,000 plus results by average customer rating. And this is what came up. And yes, I triple checked before I bought. I tried changing the wording a little bit. This here is the highest rated watch on Amazon based on customer reviews. Okay, on that note, let's get into the review. The case on this watch is absolutely gargantuan in every dimension, and depending on your personal taste, it's either really eye-catching and cool or really gaudy and embarrassing. The whole thing is finished in fake gold with black accents. There's an Invicta billboard engraved into the non-crown side. The crown is unsurprisingly large and has super deep grooves, kind of like a gear, and you have textured surfaces on the ends of the crown and pushers. Case back is a screw-down type done in brushed stainless with the Marvel and Invicta brands in the center, as well as various information about the watch engraved into the outer edges, including a limited edition number. Apparently there are only 4,000 of these. The bezel is something. It has large minute numeral engravings filled with black and this kind of bolt pattern at the 2, 4, 8, and 10 positions. But the most interesting part is the bezel edge, which is made to look like a beefy braided steel cable, which looks, well, interesting, but it actually provides some decent grip for turning the unidirectional bezel. Bezel action definitely isn't the worst I've felt, but it's a little bit sloppy and sounds cheap. Take a listen. Overall, this case is, well, interesting. The dial on this watch is aesthetically pretty cool, but functionally a disaster. At the outer edge of the dial, you have a super steep chapter ring with a contrast printed tachymeter scale. Then for the base of the dial, you have many interesting layers, which are actually well executed. The outermost edge is this gold ring that the large applied polished hour markers shoot from, and the hour markers actually look kind of like bullets. Maybe that was intentional. Either way, pretty cool. Then you have a recessed ring with the Invicta brand thinly applied to it. Then we take a step back up to this flat black backdrop. But here's where things start to get cluttered. At the top you have a large Punisher logo, which as a fan of the Punisher, that's pretty cool. Then you have 3 subdials, all interconnected without actually touching, via this gold trim piece that almost reminds me of the rotating assembly from an engine. Thing is, the straight pieces block 2 sections on each of the upper dials. I'm also not sure why these 2 random gold half circles exist above the 2 upper subdials. I'm guessing to match the one under the bottom subdial, but at least the one on the bottom subdial, they printed extra numerals that relate to that subdial. They left the top 2 blank. I'm also confused about the choice to use 2 different subdial backdrops here. Now the 3 o'clock subdial is a running 24-hour indicator separate from the chronograph, but then why not have the 2 matching subdials be the chrono dials? That would be a cool way to visually differentiate those as the chrono dials. Also, despite the dinner plate diameter of this watch, the subdials are crammed into this small black center section here, and they're all pretty small. Not that you're going to have much use for the chronograph, we'll talk about that in the next section. Last but not least, we have the hands. And this handset had the potential to be a good handset. Minus the hands for the subdials, which are the correct lengths for those dials and have good contrast, all 3 of the other hands just don't work. The shape works, and the black and gold works, but the length and thickness of those hands needs to be vastly enlarged. As you can probably see here, the thin, delicate, small main hands just don't have any visual presence on the dial, and being that the lower halves of the hour and minute hands are skeletonized, you don't even have Lume filling in half those hands to use as an extra reference. Love or hate the dial, it all pretty much made sense aesthetically until those main hands. They really dropped the ball there. Overall, for a themed dial, the aesthetics are pretty solid, all things considered, but it's definitely a bad case of form over function here. You have 3 usable complications on this watch. You have a date window at the 440-ish position, black numeral on a white disc, which was the wrong choice in terms of matching the dial, but it's legible and it works. You have a 24-hour indicator in the 3 o'clock subdial. Then you have the chronograph, and here we go. If you've seen any of my other Invicta reviews on watches that use this movement, you already know where I'm going here. What Invicta needs to do is collect all of the VD53 movements that they have left, set them on fire, then throw them in the river. It's the dumbest chronograph movement in the game. The watch has a tachymeter scale around the outer edge of the dial, but the chrono seconds are down here in this 6 o'clock subdial. Then you have a minute counter at 9 o'clock, but it only has numerals for every 10 minutes. And a few lines between those, so we're talking 5-minute intervals being legible on that tiny dial and not much else. You can't reasonably use this chronograph to time anything. It's tiny, it's poorly executed, and the fact that the main second hand on this watch isn't for the chronograph makes the tachymeter scale just for show, which is pointless. So the complication it takes up the most space on the dial and adds 2 pushers to this mammoth case is basically useless. The lume on this watch is even more useless than the chronograph. You have a tiny bit of pretty bad lume filling in the outermost halves of the hour and minute hands, but you have no lume anywhere else on the watch, so how do you tell the time in the dark? You don't. Invicta would have been much better off just having no lume fillings on this watch. Time at a glance on this watch is incredibly poor, given how large the watch is. You have clear, easy to find hour indices on the dial, but no reference for single minutes, and I already explained the issue with the handset earlier. Between the poor handset, the lack of any kind of minute index, and the fact that the center of the dial is overcluttered, it's actually not easy to find the time on this watch at a quick glance. Despite how much I can't stand this movement because of the worthless chronograph layout, it's a solid Japanese quartz movement in the timekeeping department. In the week or so that I've had it here, it's been dead on accurate to the minute, so very good. The strap on this watch is the opposite of the dial situation. In this case, I think it looks pretty bad, but it's actually not a bad strap. It's rubber and it's thick, so it's durable, pliable, actually fairly comfortable on the wrist. It even somehow seems to keep the massive watch body in place, which is great. And the free loops hold the excess strap in place and don't wander off too much. But the design, it definitely matches the watch, but you have a fake gold buckle that's 31 millimeters wide and more of these hex bolt things on both sides. All things considered though, I can't knock it down for not meeting my standards of visual taste. The strap does look the part with the rest of the watch. It does feel pretty good on the wrist, so it's not bad. Last but not least, we have value. And before I give you my thoughts on that, a quick word, if you will. Up until now, you might have been wondering what I meant by the title of this video. Well, I said what I meant. When it comes to the watch game, people are the problem. Not all of you, but some people out there. The fact that this is the top-rated watch on Amazon based on customer reviews, despite the fact that, yes, Amazon is not, the #1 source for watch lovers, but the fact that this is the #1 rated watch on Amazon based on customer ratings is sad. I mean, you all saw the watch I just reviewed, right? I mean, tons of people ordered this, and they got it, and they were thrilled with this. It worries me a little bit regarding the future of the affordable watch segment anyway. That's all I want to say on that. As for value, these sell brand new on Amazon for $135. For that price, you are getting a unique aesthetic with the whole Punisher theme. The watch does have a lot of presence, that's for damn sure, and it's accurate. But outside of that, you need to be at least 6'9" and 418 pounds to even try to pretend that this fits on your wrist properly. I'm a grown man with a 7-inch wrist, and I look like a child trying on his dad's Rolex Yachtmaster when I put this thing on. It's also not great for telling time in general because of the stuff that I went over in the time at a glance section. And it has a chronograph, but the chronograph is completely unusable. So $135 is not a lot of money, but honestly, I think literally just about anything that's a watch that you could buy is a better value than this, unless you're a Punisher fan and absolutely love this aesthetic. It's just not a great watch, despite what Amazon user reviews say. To see my review on another Invicta chronograph, click here.